Hey, curious minds! Welcome to this intellectual journey. Today we're going to unearth a forgotten figure, a master of deception who lived almost 500 years ago, but who in many ways looks a lot like us. Ever felt like the system is rigged against you? Like the rules of the game are inherently unfair? Well, you're not the first. There was someone who not only felt it, but decided to hack the system from within, using nothing but their wits. But before we dive in, I wanted to tell you a bit about the visuals you're seeing. To bring this narration to life, I've used artificial intelligence tools. So think of them as a canvas, a way to illustrate the ideas and the atmosphere of what I'm telling you. They won't always be an exact or literal representation, but rather a visual accompaniment to let your imagination soar with me. I truly hope you enjoy it. Now let's get started. Our story begins in Spain during its golden age, a period of apparent wealth and power. Gold from the Americas flowed freely and the empire seemed invincible. But beneath that gilded facade, the reality was starkly different. Most people lived in extreme poverty. Hunger was a daily struggle, while the nobility and clergy lived in opulence, preaching a morality they rarely practiced. In this world of deep contradictions, a new kind of hero is born, or rather an anti-hero. He carries no armor or sword. His only weapon is his cunning. We call this character the Pícaro, a rogue or trickster. The Pícaro is a character of humble origin, a nobody who must serve many masters just to survive. He seeks neither glory nor honor. He's after only one thing, to fill his stomach and live another day. And the first great Pícaro story, the one that defines the archetype, is anonymous. It's titled The Life of Lazarillo of Tormes and of His Fortunes and Adversities. Published in 1554, it was a literary bombshell. Its author remained hidden because what they wrote was pure dynamite. For the first time, a novel didn't recount the exploits of knights or saints, but the miserable life of a street kid. It was an outright insult to power. Lazaro, our protagonist, is born by a river and handed over by his mother to his first master, a blind man. Here he learns his first harsh lesson. The world isn't kind, and trust is a luxury he can't afford. The blind man is cruel and stingy. He teaches Lazaro to be cunning and deceitful just to eat. In a famous scene, Lazaro steals his wine using a long straw, an act of pure survival, a micro-rebellion. Each of Lazaro's masters is a scathing indictment of social hypocrisy. After the blind man, he serves a cleric, a man of the church who is even more miserly. He locks away the communion bread to keep the boy from touching it. This cleric represents the corruption of the church. He preaches charity but practices greed. Lazaro, through his innocent yet shrewd eyes, exposes this double standard without filters. Next comes his third master, an impoverished squire. This character is the personification of empty pride. He pretends to be a wealthy nobleman, but in reality, he's poorer than Lazaro himself and has nothing to eat. The squire is obsessed with appearances, with what people will say. He'd rather starve to death than admit his poverty. Here, Lazaro learns about vanity and honor as a kind of prison. Think about it for a moment. Through the eyes of a starving child, the novel is stripping bare the pillars of society, cruelty, religious avarice, and false nobility. It's a devastating social satire. The picaresque novel, with Lazarillo as its foundational work, becomes a mirror of society. A mirror that doesn't reflect an idealized image, but a grotesque and painfully real one. This is the great revolution of the modern novel. It stops looking to the heavens, to heroes and myths, and for the first time, it looks at itself, at the common people in the streets. The Pícaro isn't admirable in the traditional sense. He lies, cheats, and steals. But we can't help but empathize with him, because we understand that his actions are a response to a world that has crushed him since birth. He doesn't try to change the system because he knows it's impossible. Instead, he learns its hidden rules, its flaws, its bugs, and exploits them to survive. He is literature's first social hacker. And what's most fascinating is that this archetype, this figure of the cunning survivor, isn't exclusive to Spain. The need to hack an unjust system is a universal human experience. Now let's travel through time and space. Let's go to 18th century China during the Qing dynasty. There we find a surprising echo of the Spanish picaresque novel. We're talking about Chinese novels of manners like Dream of the Red Chamber or The Scholars. These works, like Lazarillo, focus on the social reality of their time with a critical eye. In The Scholars, for example, we don't have a single Pícaro, but a whole gallery of characters attempting to survive and ascend within an incredibly rigid and corrupt bureaucratic system. The system in question is that of the imperial examinations. It was supposed to be a meritocracy, a way for any talented man to serve the emperor, but the reality was quite different. The novel satirizes false intellectuals, corrupt officials, and aspirants who dedicate their lives to a system that rewards conformity and deceit over genuine knowledge. Just as Lazaro exposes the hypocrisy of his masters, the characters in these Chinese novels reveal the cracks in the supposedly perfect Confucian bureaucracy. The connection is astonishing. On different continents, centuries apart, and without direct cultural contact in this literary sphere, literature developed the same tool for the same task: social satire. Both the Spanish Picaro and the failed Chinese scholar are anti-heroes who force us to confront an uncomfortable truth: that institutions, however noble they may appear, are often rotten from within. This is the essence of satire. It's not just humor. It's a profound critique that uses laughter or irony to expose stupidity and injustice. It's a weapon for the powerless. The picaresque novel and its equivalents in other cultures mark a turning point. Literature becomes a social conscience, the voice of the voiceless. Before this, literature often told stories about how the world should be, full of virtuous heroes and clear villains. Afterward, it began to tell stories about how the world really is. It taught us that sometimes survival isn't heroic or pretty. It's an act of cunning, of adaptation, of doing whatever it takes in a world that gives you no other option. The Picaro, therefore, is an incredibly modern figure. He represents individualism against an oppressive system, personal ingenuity as the ultimate tool of freedom. Lazaro can't change his social class, but he can manipulate his superiors to get a warm meal. It's a small victory, but in his world, that small victory is everything. Similarly, the Chinese scholar can't reform the empire, but he can navigate its corrupt currents to secure a position for his family, or simply to expose its ridiculousness. This type of narrative, which focuses on the downtrodden, on the marginalized, is the DNA of much of the great literature that would follow. Think of Dickens, Mark Twain, Dostoevsky. All of them drew from this tradition of using fiction as a scalpel to dissect society and expose its ailments. The Picaro was patient zero. So the next time you watch a movie or read a book about a charismatic anti-hero who challenges the system, remember Lazarillo de Tormes. Remember the first hacker. He taught us that literature isn't just an escape from reality, it's also one of the most powerful tools we have to understand it, and sometimes to survive it. Lazaro's journey, transitioning from naivete to cynical cunning, is a reflection of disillusionment. It's the loss of innocence not just for a child, but for an entire culture. The satire of Lazarillo is so effective because it's told in the first person. We experience the hunger, the cold, and the humiliations through his eyes. It's not a cold analysis, it's a burning testimony. This creates an intimate bond between the reader and the character. We don't judge him, we walk with him. His struggle becomes ours, and his cunning elicits a knowing smile from us. And that's the magic of literature. It allows us to live other lives, and in doing so, to understand our own more deeply. It connects us across time with fundamental human experiences. The social critique in Chinese novels of manners, though similar in objective, often has a different tone. It can be more melancholic, more focused on the futility of ambition. While the Spanish Picaro fights for physical survival, many characters in Chinese satire battle against spiritual annihilation in a system that devours the soul. But in both cases, the underlying message is the same. There's a radical disconnect between the ideals a society preaches and the reality its members experience. The novel becomes the space where this disconnect can be safely explored. It's a laboratory to examine the failures of humanity without inciting a violent revolution. That's why these works were so dangerous and often published anonymously or censored. Because once you see hypocrisy, you can't unsee it. Satire opens your eyes forever. The figure of the Picaro teaches us that morality isn't always black and white. When the system itself is immoral, sometimes immoral acts become the only possible form of justice. Lazaro, at the novel's end, secures a stable position as a town crier. He has won the game, but to do so, he's had to accept the dishonor of his wife, who is the archpriest's mistress. This bittersweet ending is the last and cruelest of the satires. Lazaro has survived, yes, but he's paid with his dignity. He has, in a way, become part of the corrupt system he once despised. It leaves us with an uncomfortable question: what are we willing to sacrifice to survive or succeed in our own world? It's a question as relevant today as it was in 1554. This is the enduring power of the picaresque novel. It's not just a historical artifact. It's a mirror in which, if we look closely, we can still see our own reflection. The Picaro is the eternal outcast, the outsider, and in an increasingly complex and systemic world, we all feel a little marginalized sometimes, a little like Lazaro. The social satire it inaugurated hasn't died, it has evolved. We see it in TV shows, internet memes, stand-up comedy. It's the voice of the individual against the absurdity of power. The act of pointing out hypocrisy, of laughing at the powerful, is a deeply human act of resistance, and literature gave us the first tools to do it systematically. Lazarillo and Chinese novels of manners are, in essence, survival guides for unjust worlds. Their lessons, wrapped in fiction, are brutally practical. They remind us that keen observation is a weapon. Understanding people's hidden motivations, seeing beyond appearances, is the first step to avoiding becoming a victim. The Picaresque teaches us to distrust official narratives. It invites us to read the world against the grain, to seek truth in the shadows and silences, not in grandiose speeches. From the selfish blind man to the vain squire, every character Lazaro encounters is an archetype of a social vice that still exists today. They've only changed their costumes. The same holds true in Chinese satire. The scholar who buys his position, the judge who sells out. These are figures we immediately recognize in the headlines of our own newspapers. This timeless relevance is what makes a work a classic. It's not something old and dusty, but a conversation that remains alive across the centuries. The arrival of the Picaro was not just a development in literature, it represented a change in human perception. The moment we dared to state aloud that the emperor and all who served him were completely exposed. The Picaro is the child in the story who dares to speak the truth, not out of bravery, but because his hunger is greater than his fear. It is the honesty born of desperation. And that brutal honesty is what made this new form of novel a mirror. Perhaps a distorted one like those in a funhouse, but one that revealed a deeper truth about our nature. The novel ceased to be mere entertainment, becoming instead a tool for social diagnosis, a way to take a culture's pulse and find its arrhythmias. Thus, from the dusty roads of 16th century Spain to the ornate halls of 18th century China, literature learned to look downwards, towards the earth, towards us. It learned that the most important stories aren't always those of kings and generals, but of those who silently struggle for a piece of bread and a shred of dignity. The Picaro, that improbable anti-hero, that social hacker, opened the door for us to this new way of seeing the world. One that is more cynical, yes, but also infinitely more human. His legacy is proof that sometimes the most critical and subversive voices are the ones that end up defining an era and teaching us the most about ourselves. The Picaro's story isn't one of ascent to wealth or power. It's the story of conquering one's own life in the most basic and fundamental terms. And by telling us his story, he gifted us a new perspective. The perspective of someone watching the grand parade of the world not from afloat, but from the gutter. A perspective that, as we've seen, is universal. Because in every society, in every culture, there's always someone in the gutter looking up and taking notes. The Picaro was just the first to have the courage to publish his notes. And with that, he changed literature forever, giving it the sight and voice it needed to be truly modern. The next time you face an absurd rule or an injustice from the system, just smile a little. You're part of a very, very long tradition. The tradition of the Picaros. Whether in imperial Spain or dynastic China, the need to criticize and expose societal flaws found its perfect vehicle in the novel. The mirror had been forged and there was no turning back. I hope you found this journey into the origins of social satire as fascinating as I did. It's proof that great ideas resonate across centuries. The Picaro teaches us that even if we can't change the entire world, we can always change how we navigate it, often with a healthy dose of wit and skepticism. In a world that often demands conformity, the Picaro's voice whispers in our ear that to observe, to question, and sometimes to disobey is a way to keep our humanity alive. Literature, at its best, doesn't give us easy answers. It poses difficult questions, and the Picaro's question still resonates. Who is truly deceiving whom in this grand human comedy? So from Lazarillo to Chinese novels of manners, the message is clear. Society is a stage, and literature is the critic sitting in the back row, revealing the magician's tricks. We've seen how the anti-hero teaches us more about morality than the perfect hero, and how satire can be a sharper weapon than any sword. This is the birth of the modern novel, not as a mere recounting of adventures, but as a deep exploration of the human condition and its complex social structures. A mirror that, once polished by the wit of anonymous and brave authors, would never cease to reflect the often uncomfortable truths of our world. In conclusion, the Picaro is not just a character, he's a survival strategy, a philosophical perspective, and the founding spirit of modern social critique. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive and for allowing me to share these ideas with you. It's truly been a pleasure. If you enjoyed this journey, subscribe and hit the bell to not miss our upcoming explorations into the secrets of universal literature. And now it's your turn. Which modern character do you think is a direct descendant of the Picaro? Let me know your theory in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you.